3 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. Welcome aboard the postgame show along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Hope you all had a nice Mother's Day weekend. Those that celebrated. We had a brunch for my wife. It was nice.
Yeah, no, it sounded lovely. You described it to me. We were leaving on Friday, and I was like, you know what? That's a good idea.
It was nice. And weather cooperated. Gamecock baseball fans not feeling too good. Clemson baseball fans not feeling too good.
Wake Forest baseball fans feeling real good.
Yeah, and so are Georgia baseball fans. And Tennessee baseball fans feel okay. We didn't have any sweeps this weekend in conference play other than the Carolina-Georgia one. So didn't see that coming. And I said that on Twitter. We're going to jump right in. That's going to be the bulk of the show today, as you guys might imagine. Listen, I had some pushback from some. Yeah, I don't mind. How'd you not see that coming, Jay? Well, because I didn't see that, and I put it in all caps, coming. If you had told me South Carolina was going to lose this baseball series at home to Georgia, I could see that.
Mm-hmm. And that would have been a gut punch in its own.
It would
considering where you're positioned.
It would have. If you had said to me that Carolina might be swept, I suppose I could get behind the notion that Georgia came into the series as one of the hottest teams in the country, and they've certainly exited the series as maybe the hottest team in the country right now.
Best RPI riser over the weekend.
Yeah, and Carolina dropped
to 19.
Yeah, 19. But I did not see South Carolina losing 3 games to Georgia the way they did. And Saturday, especially, Game 3, was just a tremendous punch to the gut. And then some. Really, a punch to the gut. And then when you're lying on the ground, you get kicked some more and you lose a couple of teeth. And, you've got to pick yourself back up. That's the hardest part right now, I believe. I genuinely do. So, listen, we can go very short term today, and we will. We can go sort of mid, and by that, I suppose I mean giving you an outlook to the end of the year. I listen, as you might imagine, I'm not going to shy away from it. There's a lot of chatter out there. Really, it's been there for a while. But, the Fire Kingston hashtags are back, and a lot of people have changed their Twitter handles to something along those lines. We're not doing that today because the season is still going on, and this team is going to the postseason. I don't really envision a scenario where this team misses the NCAA tournament. The worst you can do, and it would not be good, is 13-17 in conference play. But you've still got a quality RPI. You've still got some really good wins. You may drop to a 3 seed if you were to, say, be swept in Knoxville and not win a game in Hoover. Mm-hmm. I could potentially see that. But this team's going to the tournament. So there is that. Now, that being said, you're listening to someone talk right now who puts a bare minimum expectation every season on hosting. This is a program that should expect to host in the opening round of the NCAA baseball tournament every season. You won't do it every season. No one does. But that needs to be your benchmark. If you do, well, there you go. And if you can get into a season like the days of yesteryear when you were often a top 8 national seed, that's cool too. When you don't, you need to figure out why. Well, you're not going to now. Short of, I won't call it a miracle. I think that's too strong. But short of winning this series in Knoxville and getting at least a couple of wins in Hoover, you're not hosting. And the reason you're not going to host is because your pitching completely fell apart. I'd say it more strongly, but I can't. But I'll clean it up for you kids out there. And the pitching crapped the bed real bad.
Real bad.
Real bad. And Saturday especially, just, once it got bad, it got worse. That's who you are. So there's no fixing it. I threw out on Twitter today, we'll talk with Coach Kingston coming up bottom of the hour about what they can do to get back on track. And one of those things may be, as Mark has said, is moving Garrett Gainey into the starting rotation. They did that. He pitched well, but you lose the game. Ty Good gave you 80-something pitches when he wasn't supposed to pitch as early as he did in the opener. Do you put Ty into the rotation? Do you throw some things, no pun intended, at Tennessee that while they wouldn't be caught off guard or see them as unexpected, just different in terms of the scouting report they may have on you at this point in time? Kimball it's not happening. SQ didn't start this weekend, I know, but when he came in, once again, just didn't have it. I know Mark told us there was some arm issue there. Mm-hmm. So you got to think he's probably on the shelf. Now you're dipping really deep into this pitching well, and I'm not sure how deep it can really go to begin with. That's just it. This team, we looked at this team early and said, well, they're going to score some runs. There's no doubt about that. They're going to score some runs. But beyond that, if the pitching could come around, then you've and for most of it, until this past weekend, you were still in a position to be a tournament host. And now you're not. It can happen just like that, and it did. And let me, before I toss it to you, sir, you got to give Georgia a lot of credit. I know Gamecock fans don't want to hear that. All Gamecock fans right now, at least the angry ones, want to do is complain about their team, and I get it.
Yep.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you how to feel, but I am gonna tell you that if you don't give Georgia the credit they deserve for how well they're playing, then you are doing it wrong. You can't just blame your team. Georgia's playing really, really, really good baseball right now. They've got maybe the best player in the country. They've got a kid who just won the Player of the Week award, who had doubled his home run output in one weekend. Their pitching did enough. Their pitching's not that great either.
I would say it's bad.
Yeah. We had a guy hit us on Twitter and say, you guys had me convinced that Georgia's pitching was going to be bad enough for Carolina to win again. Amen, brother. I didn't know Carolina's pitching was going to get that much worse.
South Carolina scored 7 runs a game over the weekend, which is good enough to be like 5th in the SEC if that was their total all season long. Yeah. They played to their average, if not better, That wasn't the issue. Georgia's pitching was just good enough.
But Georgia, averaged 13 runs a game?
Yes. A whole lot more. Yeah. You can't win that way.
No.
You went into the top of the 8th inning on Saturday with a 2-run cushion. And you blew it. I mean,
you had a 4-1. They made it 4-4. You had a 6-4.
Yep.
Wheels fell off.
And the wheels completely fell off in those last 2 innings. And you just could not. And a lot of it was with 2 outs.
Yeah.
You needed one more out in some of those innings to avoid the worst case scenario. And you couldn't get the 1 out. And that's the frustrating thing. And it also happened by way of missing the strike zone, throwing a ton of wild pitches. I think that was really the name of the game on Friday night. When the pitching woes happened, you had way too many balls hit the backstop, and Georgia was able to advance way too frequently, way too many easy passes. Look, you're like pitching. You should never, ever have a whip above 2. But the starting unit and the bullpen both had whip over 2. You weren't getting anything out of anybody that wasn't named Garrett Gainey.
Right.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: Georgia didn't like if we're going back to Georgia's pitching. Really, outside of Leighton Finley giving them 5 innings of solid baseball, of really solid pitching. He didn't shut anybody out, but it was really solid. And then on Friday, having Colton Smith be able to go 5 1/3 inning, those 2 guys combining for 10 1/3 preserved Georgia to where their bullpen didn't have to get utilized.
Right.
And they have a bad bullpen.
Right.
They honestly do. They don't have a really good bullpen in terms of the numbers. Some of them are laughable. They pitched a guy that almost had like a 7 ERA. At one point in the game on Saturday, and he was able to get out of a few innings. They were just able to get out and close innings, and you couldn't.
Yeah.
And that was the big difference, and you can't have that happen in a series at home.
No, and look, again, some of you want to just, scrap it right now. Like I said, I get it. I'm gonna, there's a lot of you that hit us on Twitter. I'm gonna read a lot of your comments.
We got hit a lot on Twitter.
Yeah.
We got hit so much we're bruised.
And again, I'm not telling anybody how to feel. But for the record, because, again, this is a team that is going to the postseason. The only two times, and I don't know if I need to share this or not, but I'm going to so people know where I'm coming from. The only two times, at least when it comes to the Gamecocks, in my career, and I've been a talk show host now coming up on 22 years, the only two times that I have called for a coach to be removed from his job during a season are Darren Horns last year and Will Muschamp's last year. And really, I think I might have said it the year prior to Will when he got one more opportunity. Because it just looked untenable. So with that, and I heard Tyler read a text from somebody earlier about the end of the Fogler era and his detachment from the community. The reason Eddie left is not the same. Eddie should never have been. Coach McGee put too much on Eddie, and I think it was unrealistic. But I'm not going to go down the Eddie Fogler rabbit hole today. This team is going to the tournament. Now, that doesn't mean hey, back off. Because as I said, I understand that there is a different level of realistic expectation placed upon this team. Now, I draw a line at certain things. When I hear some people say, this team needs to be in Omaha every 3 years, that, to me, it's not that it's unrealistic. It's just too arbitrary. I mean, where do you come up with that? I mean, Coach Tanner went 6 times. I get it. 3 years on. And then there was a 6-year gap. Yep. And I always remind people, 08, 09, and I was on this radio station then. Well, I think it's just maybe past Ray by. Maybe it's just time for something else. It's just not quite happening anymore. You bring Holbrook in and you bring some talent in, and you go on another big run. And then those three, we all know how those ended. So it is realistic to put a different set of expectations on the baseball program. But I don't know if 3 trips to Omaha every 10 years or so, 4 trips. Again, how do you come up with this? Between 1985 and 02, after you had been 5 times in 10 years, 70s and 80s, you went 17 seasons without going to the World Series. Now it's been 12. So hosting every year, I'm with that.
Looks that puts you in position.
You need to get to the Supers, and Mark got there twice. Chad got there twice. That's good, but it's not great. And again, I get it. People want to go to Omaha. So is removing somebody the best way to do that right now? Yeah, we're going to hit a break here. And remember, should you do that, and I'm not here to talk about it in great detail today, but should you do that, chances are very good that you're rebuilding this roster from the ground up. And is that what you want to? It's just, I'm not saying it can or can't be done, but you got to think about everything. You do that. And Ethan Petrie's gone. He's transferring somewhere for his final year, as an example. And there would likely be others. If Messina doesn't go ahead and go pro this summer, I don't see him coming back. They're here to play for Mark. Now, again, take that as you will. So lots to think about here. Love to hear from you. 803-404-6100. Coach Kingston will be with Elijah and me coming up in about inside of 20 minutes. So we'll talk with Mark about what's going on this week and what he and Coach Williams may do with the pitching rotation. But don't hold back. We'll hear from you. We'll read the comments. 803-404-6100. Love Chevy phone lines, Firehouse Subs text line. You're listening to the postgame show. 19 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. Get into some phone calls in just a second. I threw out a tweet after the ball game Saturday afternoon. I see the timestamp here, 5:48 p.m. I said, yikes, didn't see that coming. Lots to discuss on Monday. A lot of you have responded to that, so thank you. I mean, I'm here for the engagement. Chip said to me, not sure why you didn't see that coming. The situation was tailor-made for an implosion. Starting pitching has been a disaster, which has thrown the rest of the bullpen in total disarray. At a potent offensive team like Georgia, add water and mix. I said, well, I didn't see this degree of loss coming. And I said, if you predicted that, good for you. He said, well, I didn't predict it. Now I'm paraphrasing, but I didn't. I did not see South Carolina getting humbled the way they did. 14-10. And really, was that game that close?
No. The spirit of that was like 14-7.
Yeah. Carolina scored a couple late to
hit a couple home runs on a bad bullpen late.
Right. 11-5 on Friday in a game that also just felt like,
You were down 5-1 by the time your starting pitcher was pulled, and you played from behind the entire game.
And Saturday, you had an eighth inning lead. You had an early lead at 4-1. Georgia tied it at 4. You went up 6-4. And then Georgia scored 10 unanswered runs. It was brutal.
Yeah, the eighth inning on Saturday being an implosion.
And the reason, and so, again, if you listen, I don't care what people say to me, but why did I think Carolina had an opportunity here? Well, you went toe-to-toe with Arkansas. You went toe-to-toe with Kentucky.
Beat Kentucky 2-3.
So you won the series with Kentucky. I wouldn't say you went toe-to-toe with A&M. They were definitely better than you, but you won a game. You went to Florida and won the series. I know Florida's not what we typically think of. You swept Vanderbilt. I know Vandy's not what you typically think of. But nevertheless, so there were reasons to believe that you could win a game or certainly not get beat by an average of about 13-7, which is what this ended up being. I didn't see that coming. But at least Chip did give a nod to how well Georgia is playing, which I say, if you aren't including that in your equation, then I think you're doing, the whole issue a bit of a disservice. Did Carolina have some failure? Without question. But, Georgia may be the hottest team in America right now.
That lineup 1 through 9 is terrifying. And it's not just Condon, too. Condon had a big night, the first night, but guys like Trey Phelps hitting 4 home runs in a weekend and doubling it, even though it's not like he's, some scrub. He just wasn't much of a home run hitter, but any given weekend he can let loose. That's terrifying. Corey Collins hit the ball about as well as anybody in the country this past weekend. And that guy leads off. I mean, having, Collins and Condon at a 1-2 punch to start, the lineup. There's not a lot of teams outside of maybe, Tennessee that have that much power at the top of their lineup and are able to replicate it down the order 1 through 9.
Right.
That's a really, really impressive team that if they get any type of pitching, they can see themselves getting a run.
Let's get to the phone lines on this Monday. Mike is going to start us off. Hey, Mike, good afternoon.
Hey, Jay, thanks for letting me on real quick. I'm the one that sent that text about that comparison with Coach Fogler and Coach Kingston. I actually like both of them. I've talked to you before. We were at Carolina at the same time, just didn't know you. Unfortunately, I love you. But I just my blood pressure just boils when I hear all these fans. I'm a diehard Gamecock, but I think respectfully, both coaches have done quite well. I mean, obviously, we won't go down that rabbit hole about Fogler, but Fogler wanted to stay here. I just think they both had a little bit of an issue connecting with the fans. Mm-hmm. That being said, my point in that text is that I just couldn't elaborate on more. I was telling Elijah that, good Lord, I mean, this is the hardest conference in all of America this year. And I don't know if y'all caught what Coach Kingston said in one of the clips y'all played earlier about in this day in the transfer portal era, you can rebuild pretty quickly. And he's not trying to make an excuse. That's a good Georgia team. But, he's going up against a lot more than Coach Tanner Holbrook or even Coach Raines ever did. And I like Coach Kingston, and I feel bad he's getting a bad rap. I feel like The pitching obviously is not where we want it to be, but goodness gracious, I mean, this year to be where we are with having struggles in the, with pitching again, I just think people need to lighten up a little bit. I didn't get to expand on that, but that's kind of where I was going.
Did, Mike. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. And listen, I will not shy away from the fact that I am one who has said there are times when a lack of connection to the fan base can be problematic. If nothing else, it can help buy you some goodwill. Maybe not time. Results will always be the number one arbiter here, right? Like, I mean, how are you doing? But again, Mark, this team's going to the tournament. This team is having a very unfortunate last couple of weeks when it comes to pitching, and they did go in. They did a nice job in the portal. It's always hard to tell whether it's high school or portal recruiting. And college baseball, those of you who follow this sport closely understand that college baseball has really always been operating in more of what we call a portal era than basketball or football ever have, simply because of the junior college ranks. So many guys that go from high school to JUCO or community college for the reason that they can more quickly get looked at. Maybe they don't want to sign with a 4-year school, which binds you to college baseball for 3 full seasons. So
late bloomers. They're just late bloomers.
Sometimes they are. Look at a kid like Condon who's coming around even. But, not that he's a JUCO kid, but you see my point. But
he was about to go D3. That was one of his options, was to go D3.
Yeah. But college baseball and college coaches are more familiar. Yeah, I think we're placing maybe too much right now in the so-called portal era by using basketball and football when college baseball, again, has been doing this for a long time. It's different now in terms of the kids at 4-year schools, I grant you. But it's not so different, really, in terms of roster management and national recruiting for the coaching staffs around the country. Look, it didn't work out for Kimball. Doesn't mean it can't at some point, but when you come back from that kind of surgery and you hadn't pitched in a while, it's just not there. I don't know what's wrong with Dylan Eskew, but it's just not there. Eli Jones has been up and down. It's just not there. Matthew Becker, do you need to move him around a little bit? It's been an up and down season for Becker, and he's a pretty solid pitcher. Ty Good, they tell us, who had been a starter at his previous stop. Well, we like him more in the bullpen role. Well, you may have to pull some strings now. Gainey, same thing. Mark said, and we'll ask him in just a few minutes, what are you going to do this weekend? So I think they went out and got some pieces. I think they did a pretty good job in the portal. But that the pitching imploded to this degree, you can't predict that. And it's in an era, as you've pointed out, Elijah, where this year runs are just at a bigger number. That's just it's things are cyclical, especially in college baseball. And we don't have gorilla ball anymore. We don't have these bats again that are 34 inches and 24 ounces. Yeah. But it's been figured out a little bit.
Yeah.
And you just runs are way up, but it shouldn't be like this.
There are very few elite pitching staffs in the SEC and in the country.
803-404-6100. If you would like to be part of the program, or you can hit us on Twitter at jphillips1075, at E_Campbell3, or the station Twitter feed, 1075 The Game. A lot of you have hit us on the Firehouse Subs text line as well. Let me get one more hit from Twitter, and then I'm going to turn it over to Elijah. Laurie asks, do we need more good players, or do we need pitchers with defined roles with a commitment to developing them in those roles? Baseball is a highly mental game, pitching especially. Constant and often last-minute changes are a huge ask of your pitchers and can't be treated like lineup changes. But then she added, I thought very nicely, they need time and grace and patience to adjust to new roles. Got to keep believing in them. That's an excellent question, Lori. And, to borrow from our good friend Michael Haney, you are who you are right now. I mean, South Carolina's played 50 baseball games. 51 baseball games, right? You are who you are. So, look, Gainey and let's say Gainey and Good go into the rotation this weekend. I think Good's made one start.
I believe so.
Now Gainey's made one start. So, you almost would say, and I say this a little tongue in cheek, like, well, they've got a new role. They've done it before, so go do it again. It's as Mark said, it's easier said than done because if you do that, then you adjust in other spots, equal and opposite reaction and all those kind of things. So, I would say, Laurie, if I may, not to dodge your question, but to answer it, do we need more good players or do we need pitchers with defined roles? Yes.
Just yes.
I mean, and I don't mean to be a smartass because listen, y'all know, again, I really should get T-shirts made. I will always say more good players. I don't care if I'm what Kirby's got over in Athens right now with his football team or what Nick had at the height of his powers. You always want more good players. That's college sports. Again, high school, by and large, the district you live in. The pros have a draft, or at least free agency once you've been selected into the league the first time. College, go get as many as you can. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I come back around to a question I asked the late, great Dan Reeves the last time I got to interview him. It was during COVID when Shane got hired. And the last question I asked him that interview was, Coach, you got any advice for your new head football coach here at your alma mater? He said, yeah. Tell him to go get some players. It's college football, and that Georgia accent of his. That's it. And same thing is true. I mean, go get more good players. So, yeah, but I do think it's a big ask. When you've got some guys, Laurie, that clearly are just not pitching up to their potential for whatever reasons, be it a combination of ability, injury, whatever, and you're trying to redefine the pitching staff in mid-May, it's a big ask.
Yeah.
It's a big ask.
It is a very big ask. But I will say, if you do get the better pitchers, you get more better pitchers, that should make your job easier in finding where to put them, right?
Yep.
I mean, because I get the mentality, the science, and everything behind, why a pitcher might be better in one role than the other. I think at this point now, you just got to find out who your best pitchers are and find ways to get them in the game longer. Because while Garrett Gainey is great, I think pound for pound, he's your best pitcher. And he does you no good when you're down 4 runs.
Nope.
He does you no good. Certain pitchers do you no good when, like Ty Good had to come into the game. They're down 4-0 before South Carolina even was able to have bats in their hands.
One out in the first, right?
That puts him in a really hard position. You don't get to maximize exactly how good Ty Good can be, right? And I think the reason you led for most of the game and the reason that you were in such a good position on Saturday was because Garrett Gainey got you 5 1/3, and you were in a position to win that game, and it fell apart there later, as opposed to playing catch up, early on in the game. At this point, if I'm Mark, I'm not, but if I am, I'm just gonna. Garrett Gainey's our ace.
Yeah,
we're starting games off, and we'll figure it out from there. We can platoon from there to try to get one out here and there, and maybe not rely too much on one specific pitcher in the bullpen having to throw a bunch, and then be able to use them in different maybe platooning situations, matchup situations. At this point, I'm leaning towards my 3 starters being Ty Good, Garrett Gainey, Eli Jones, just because those are your best pitchers, and whatever way I can get my best pitchers in the game longer, even if it means asking them to do something they haven't done particularly all year. I mean, Garrett Gainey's only thrown more than 2 innings in a game in 10 of his 20 appearances.
Right.
That's half. Half the time he is there less than 2 innings. So it's a little bit of an ask to get him to get you longer into a game.
Yeah, he's in conference games. That's a great point. In conference games, he has 26 innings pitched in 12 games.
But in those games in which he's pitched at least 2 innings, he struck out 41 batters, has walked 3, has a WHIP of 0.84, and an ERA below 2.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And if that means asking him to throw a couple more innings than normal, and he's not comfortable at this point, I don't know what you have to lose in terms of stability of your pitching staff.
Laurie, thanks for the question. Got a lot more hits on Twitter, and the Firehouse Subs text line is filling up. So thank you for that. Continue to add your thoughts, questions, comments. We will get to a lot more of that as we discuss the more immediate future for Carolina baseball ahead of the weekend series finale at Tennessee. This is the postgame show.